This is a Benjamin Fulford Geopolitical Update for March 15, 2025, brought to you by qualified observers. In this update, Fulford details the looming collapse of the Western financial system, driven by corruption, geopolitical conflicts, and economic mismanagement. He explores how Ukraine's downfall is acting as a catalyst, exposing the weaknesses of Western leadership. The report touches on escalating tensions between China and the United States, the internal power struggles within NATO, and the shifting balance of global alliances. Fulford also examines Elon Musk's warnings about the financial system, the role of cryptocurrency in the United States' survival strategy, and the behind-the-scenes political maneuvering shaping the future of Europe, Israel, and North America. Now, let's get into the full report. The financial system is headed for catastrophic collapse. The state of the Western political and financial system can be illustrated as follows. It is a system that is heading straight into a collapse. The current Western political class is unable to deal with the situation. The trigger will be the collapse of Ukraine. As Timofey Bordachev said, in a collective, the individual mind becomes subservient to the collective interest and loses the ability to act independently. This dynamic is now evident in EU policymaking. The bloc has effectively abandoned its instinct for self-preservation. Ukraine is proof that even large states can adopt self-destructive foreign policies. This poses dangers not just for Europe but for the wider world. What we are witnessing in the West is a group of leaders who have been blackmailed, bribed, and brainwashed all their lives into believing in a certain paradigm. Now, as reality destroys their paradigm, they are in a state of denial. They cannot veer from a script dating back centuries that calls for Russia to be destroyed, followed by China. Nothing illustrates this more than government leaders in Canada, France, and Poland basically calling for the use of nuclear weapons against the United States and Russia. This is a sign of desperation because the fact is, as we shall see below, Western Europe has been defeated, and its current political and financial system cannot survive. Furthermore, the situation in the United States is almost as bad as the government clutches at straws in an attempt to avoid bankruptcy. This is seen in patently false numbers being bandied about, such as give us back the $350 billion we gave you by handing over $500 billion worth of rare earth metals in Ukraine. Fact check, the United States gave Ukraine less than a third of that amount, and the only rare earths in Ukraine are about $20 billion worth of lithium that is in Russian hands. Talk about switching to cryptocurrency is also nonsense because it is not real. It is just numbers on computers controlled by the alphabet agencies. Unfortunately, it looks like the whole system will have to collapse before it is possible to start rebuilding. We must, not in several years, but in the weeks to come, find a way to move from our current social model to another, more modern and freer one, without harming the most deprived. It is unlikely that our current political class is capable of this, is how French journalist Thierry Masson summarizes the situation we are now facing. Elon Musk describes the situation as follows. We're reprogramming the matrix. Success was never one of the possible outcomes. If you're in the matrix, success was never possible. The only way to achieve success is to reprogram the matrix such that success is one of the possible outcomes. That's what we're doing. We may or may not succeed.
Doge has found the coffin where the vampire sleeps.
Yeah. We're reprogramming the matrix. Success was never one of the possible outcomes. As a Kobayashi Maru situation. If you're in the matrix, success was never possible. The only way to achieve success is to reprogram the matrix such that success is one of the possible outcomes. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We may or may not succeed.
Well, it's certainly a lot of fun to watch.
Musk may be saying we can't escape the matrix because, like the launch of SpaceX's 7th Starship test flight, the 8th attempt, About 8 minutes after it launched from Brownsville, Texas, several engines appeared to fail, and the 400-foot-tall rocket was last seen spinning before communication was lost. What Musk calls the Matrix is reality, as opposed to the fake financial reality, including a fake space program, the West has been living in for about 50 years. Musk is also concerned he may be assassinated in D.C. for exposing too many details about the corruption he is dealing with.
To accept corrupt money.
Yeah, but the problem is if you paid them a lot more, they're still not going to make as much money as they would insider trading.
But it's less of a forcing function.
Yes. It's a,
well, let me put it this way. Like if you say like somebody's got a, let's say they got like whatever, some kids in D.C. and like it's expensive. It's like expensive place to live. The schools are terrible, so like they need to send their kids to like some kind of private schooling situation. They literally cannot afford that. They cannot afford that right now. So then you get into the situation, well, from their standpoint, well, they've got to, they'll say they're doing it for their family. They're doing it for their kids.
well, especially if it's legal, and it currently is. You kind of be silly to not do that. If you were a part of a group of people that's passing a bill, and you know this bill's going to get passed, you know the votes are there, and you know it's going to affect this industry and this particular manufacturer, and you can buy stock.
It's more than just insider trading. Like the insider trading stuff, like the stock portfolio stuff is quite trackable, but there's, it's a lot more than insider trading.
The way they're acquiring wealth.
Correct.
And what other methods?
I mean, this is really going to get me assassinated. It's like I'm not lengthening my lifespan by explaining this stuff, to say the least. I mean, I was supposed to go back to D.C. How am I going to survive? This fucker's going to kill me for sure. In fact, I do think like it's like I actually have to be careful that I don't push too hard on the corruption stuff because it's going to get me killed.
The corruption he is talking about is a system that creates money out of nothing and then launders it through the stock market. This can be seen in the illustration below, showing U.S. stocks account for 50% of world market capitalization, even though the U.S. accounts for about 15.5% of the global economy in PPP terms. In other words, U.S. stock prices should be worth only a quarter of what they now are if they are to be in line with reality. Musk, the world's richest man, is a beneficiary of this system but is also aware he is living on borrowed time. Tesla sales plunged by 76.3%, 65.5%, and 49.16% in Germany, Australia, and China in February, so valuing this company more than all the other car companies in the world combined is becoming an obvious lie. This plunge in sales could be part of a KM attack on Musk. An investigation has found 5 ActBlue-funded groups responsible for Tesla protests: Troublemakers, Disruption Project, Rise and Resist, Indivisible Project, and Democratic Socialists of America. ActBlue funders include George Soros, Reid Hoffman, Herbert Sandler, Patricia Baumann, and Leah Hunt Hendricks. ActBlue is currently under investigation for allowing foreign and illegal donations in criminal violation of campaign finance regulations. This week, 7 ActBlue senior officials resigned, including the Associate General Counsel. Paid protests aside, the reality is that in terms of physical trade, that is, real things like cars and commodities being put on ships, data from the World Trade Organization shows the value of Chinese manufacturing exports in 2002, while America's global trade deficit was over $1.2 trillion. This imbalance has been going on for decades. It means the U.S. has been getting high on stock market fentanyl, while China has been taking over the real-world economy. This also means it is time to talk to China. China has been patiently waiting for Trump to start negotiating. However, their patience is running out. If war is what the US wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end, China's embassy said on X, reposting a line from a government statement on Tuesday. Japanese military intelligence sources say China is preparing a nasty surprise that will involve cutting all the underwater cables linking Taiwan to the rest of the world and then starting a naval blockade of the island. At the same time, they have infiltrated about 800,000 armed men into Japan and have systematically identified US and Japanese military targets that need to be taken out in order for China to take over Japan. A Chinese hardliner also once bragged to me they could take over India in a matter of months. In a sign a clash with China is coming, Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey secured a historic $24 billion judgment against the Chinese Communist Party for unleashing the COVID-19 pandemic 6 times more than the previous largest judgment in Missouri history. A court has ruled in favor of Missouri issuing a historic $24 billion judgment against the Chinese Communist Party in a COVID-related lawsuit, allowing Missouri to move forward with seizing China's US-held assets, including farmland and other properties, to collect the judgment. Also, at a G7 foreign ministers meeting in Canada this week, the US is going to insist on tougher wording against China, and at the same time soften anti-Russian rhetoric in the communique. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated in an exclusive interview with Breitbart News that President Donald Trump and his administration aim to break Russia away from China in the same way that former President Richard Nixon broke China away from the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Rubio stated that the US-China relationship will define this century, and therefore it would be better for both Russians and Americans if the Russians were not completely dependent on China as a junior partner. However, the West will be in no shape to deal with China as long as it is stuck in a civil war pitting Trump and Russia against most other Western governments. The main bone of contention is Ukraine. US President Donald Trump has suspended military aid to Ukraine and used his powers as part of the Five Eyes alliance of the US, Britain, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand to suspend intelligence to Kyiv. This is making the other members of the Five Eyes spy alliance, Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, as well as Israel and Saudi Arabia, wary of sharing information with the US. Now, the US has begun evacuating high-ranking officials, including generals and ministers from the Ukrainian border area. This move prompted Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk to say Poland will try to gain access to nuclear and other non-conventional weapons under a French nuclear umbrella initiative. The EU fascists are also trying to ban patriot Călin Georgescu from becoming president of Romania because they still think it is going to be a base for attacking Russia. Europe is now a dictatorship, comments Georgescu. Not for long, though. The European Union officially hit the panic button with Ursula von der Leyen calling for an $840 billion military rearmament plan. In the video below, you can listen to the delusional witch von der Leyen say, "We will drive Rearm Europe plan forward with full force." She says pumping cash into rearming Europe will also prop up EU's economies.
This can be the foundation of a European defence union. We will drive the Rearm Europe plan forward with full force. The idea behind it is we must unleash the full potential in the face of concrete threats. And if we can team up with other like-minded countries, such as the UK or Norway or Canada, the potential is even greater. And it's important to state that economic strength and Europe's plan to rearm are two sides of the same coin. Europe's economic and innovative potential is an asset for its security, but vice versa, you see that Europe's defence efforts can give a massive boost to a more competitive single market in the midterm and in the long term.
As the analyst linked below says, this is a suicide pact designed to plunge the continent into an irreversible economic and geopolitical crisis. NATO is disintegrating, Washington is pulling the plug, and Russia is watching the whole thing unfold, knowing it has already won the war for dominance. Trump, for his part, is reportedly planning to withdraw 35,000 troops from Germany and deploy them in Hungary. This move comes as Hungary's leader Viktor Orban says globalists seek to destabilize Serbia, Slovakia, and Hungary after losing Washington to the Patriots.
Mióta az Amerikai Egyesült Államokban a patrióták győztek, azóta itt, Közép-Európában felerősödtek a destabilizációs törekvések. Ennek elszenvedője szerintem Szerbia is. 3 ország van a célkeresztben, Szerbia, Szlovákia és Magyarország. Ugyanis ez a globális pénzügyi és politikai gépezet, amely létezik a világban, ez korábban elfoglalta az Egyesült Államok kormányát, elfoglalta Brüsszelt, és néhány európai tagállamot is, köztük Magyarországot is. Úgy kellett őket innen kiverni, hogyha emlékszik még a Soros-féle hálózattal folytatott küzdelmünkre, amelynek utóvét harcait és végleges lezárását most húsvétra tervezzük. Tehát ezek a globális pénzügyi erők elvesztették Washingtont, visszahúzódtak Brüsszelbe, és harcolnak a közép-európai hadállásokért. Ebben a 3 országban, Szerbiában, Szlovákiában és Magyarországban patrióták vannak kormányon. És ennek a következménye az, amit most önök látnak.
This is setting the stage for a combined Eastern European, Russian, and US military removal of the governments of Germany and France. We have an ocean between us. They're in much greater danger, if you call it danger. You know the thing with Europe that bothers me? They've given more money to Russia from buying their oil than they've put into Ukraine.
$1 billion. He should have equalized with Europe. All he had to do is say, you got to stay even with us. They're in for 100, we're in for 350. How does that, and we have an ocean in between us, right? We're not in the danger that they are. They are in much greater danger, if you call it danger. He should have never done that. You know the other thing with Europe that bothers me? They've given Russia more money, by far, for buying their oil than they put into Ukraine. So they're paying all this money to Russia, and we're in there for $350 billion.
The reality is, EU governments will be removed long before they get any chance to rearm. With the US cutting off military support to Ukraine in an abrupt pivot towards Russia, many European governments are feeling remorse for decades of US arms purchases that have left them dependent on Washington for the continued functioning of their weaponry. The fact is, the US maintains secret so-called kill switches that would immobilize most EU aircraft and weapon systems. This means these bare-breasted extremist women screaming "Heil Donald Trump," "Heil Vladimir Putin," "Heil Elon Musk," while doing Nazi salutes in Paris are about the only troops the EU can deploy.
Heil Donald Trump! Heil Donald Trump! Heil Vladimir Putin! Heil Vladimir Putin! Heil Elon Musk! Heil Elon Musk! Heil Viktor Orban! Heil Viktor Orban! Heil Georgia Meloni! Heil Georgia Meloni! Heil Marine Le Pen! Heil Marine Le Pen!
In a sign of just how brainwashed these people are, here you can watch MSNBC say Ukrainians are more American than we are, huh?
So for the person who's watching, who just heard you say Donald Trump is not standing up for Ukraine, what do you say to the person who says, well, I don't care about Ukraine. I want Donald Trump to stand up for America. What do you say to them?
I don't know where you got that. I mean, I don't have time for it.
Yes, but we hear it. We hear it.
Here's the thing. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a place where you thought the Russians were the good guys? What part of America did you grow up in where they taught you the Russians were the good guys and our allies were the bad guys? That's the flip here that we need to continue to remind people. The Russians are the bad guys. They're raping women. They're killing children. They're bombing cities. The Ukrainians are the noble good guys. In some ways, they're more American than we are over the last couple of years. And we must stand with them in the same way we stood with the allies in World War II and since this country was founded. This is not just about Ukraine. This is about the core and the integrity of American values. And that's what he's also betraying. Not just Ukraine, he's betraying American values.
That's what I was hoping you would get at, because this isn't just about Ukraine. This is about Russia. Yeah. And don't we need to remind the American people that they are the bad guy?
Where does MSNBC go from here? It has become much clearer these past few months just how far NATO has shifted away from U.S. interests. Even though the United States funds a whopping 70% of NATO's cost, our own NATO allies are working against the United States as President Trump attempts to pull us back from the brink of war with Russia. President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk made quite a stir with just 2 words posted on his social media platform, X. Responding to a post that said it's time to leave NATO and the UN, Musk replied, "I agree." It is also clear that Ukraine's dictator Vladimir Zelensky is about to be removed. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says it clearly, Zelensky is not even a person. He knows Zelensky is an avatar. As French journalist Thierry Masson points out, unelected Volodymyr Zelensky, whose mandate expired 8 months ago, sits there but has no say in the matter. All decisions are made under the authority of the former head of the Foreign Secret Service, SZRU, Oleksandr Litvinenko. This council, which has banned all opposition political parties, burned 3 million books, and banned the majority Orthodox Church in the country, is the stronghold of the integral nationalists. That is to say, the disciples of Dmitro Dontsov and his future man, Stepan Bandera, the collaborators of the Nazis. By bombing the main pumping station of the pipeline in Russia, he knew what he was doing. He was attacking U.S. interests in Russia. Think about it. A modestly successful comedian, Volodymyr Zelensky, convinced the United States of America to spend $350 billion to enter a war that could not be won, that should never have started, that he will never be able to solve without the United States and Trump. The United States spent $200 billion more than Europe. Europe's money is guaranteed, while the United States will receive nothing in return. To replace this government, Trump allies held talks about holding new elections with Ukrainian opposition leader Yulia Tymoshenko and senior members of the party of Petro Poroshenko, Zelensky's immediate predecessor as president. The other Khazarian mafia government that is collapsing is the regime in Israel. Israel has vanished from the U.S. news recently because the situation there is terminal, according to Pentagon sources. Turkish MI6 and CIA sources all say Israel is now begging Russia to save them from Turkey and Egypt. That is why Benjamin Netanyahu sent his military secretary R. Goffman to Moscow. Tel Aviv wants Moscow to maintain its military presence in Syria. This comes as the Syrian state news agency Sana reported on Sunday, a horrific massacre was carried out by remnants of the fallen regime against the police and security forces in the city of Kardaha. This prompted a Syrian counterattack, and in reaction, MI6 sent the following request to Russia. We respectfully seek your consideration of a temporary humanitarian arrangement under which the United Kingdom, alongside other willing nations, may be granted the limited use of Russian military and logistical facilities in Syria for emergency humanitarian and peacekeeping efforts. What this means is Israel wants to evacuate its proxies from Syria and needs Russian help. Also, in a sign it has lost its war of extermination in Gaza, the Arab League adopted a $53 billion project to rebuild Gaza. Nearly half of Gaza's residents are expected to be transferred to 7 security zones while construction begins. There has also been regime change in Canada. Ex-Bank of Canada and Bank of England Governor and King of the Globalists Mark Carney won the race to become Canada's next Prime Minister, replacing globalist Justin Trudeau. Here you can watch his victory comments.
In first place, the next Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, with 131,674 votes, resulting in 29,457 allocated points, representing 85.9% of the vote.
We've just had the announcement that Mark Carney is now the new Prime Minister of Canada and the leader, of course, of the Liberal Party. And he won by a pretty astonishing 85% of the vote. We're expecting to hear from him soon, but let's go straight to Diana Magnay, our international correspondent. Diana, not only has he won, but he has won resoundingly.
That was an astonishing difference between him and Chrystia Freeland, the number 2, who's long been Deputy Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, who resigned at the end of last year. She only got 8% of the vote, and Mark Carney coming in with nearly 86%. That is absolutely astonishing. He promised a mandate for change within the Liberal Party, and I think that's clearly what people wanted. They wanted someone who was an economic strong hand, which Mark Carney, having been both Governor of the Bank of England through Brexit, Governor of the Bank of Canada too, is something that, you know, economics is his bread and butter. And I think also this was clear that they just wanted to move away from the politics of the last decade of Justin Trudeau, with whom Chrystia Freeland was so closely implicated. You know, Mark Carney is a very, very solid figure in terms of the economy and therefore dealing with Donald Trump. But he doesn't have political experience in the way that Chrystia Freeland did. He's never been a politician, but in his own words, he has been a leader. You don't lead institutions like that unless you have considerable experience leading organisations. And he has a very, very difficult job on his hands in terms of this tariff war with Donald Trump. But clearly, the Canadian Liberals felt that he was the man to combat Donald Trump rather than Chrystia Freeland.
The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect.
Carney was the carbon causes global warming guy because that is what his boss Queen Elizabeth wanted. Before her death, the Queen changed her mind about carbon and reached an agreement with the Asians to concentrate on increasing the amount and variety of life, including human life, so hopefully he will support the future planning agency. We have reached out to him and will let you know if we hear back. Also, like it or not, Carney will have to negotiate some sort of North American union with Donald Trump. As Trump says, you erase that artificially drawn line and take a look at what that looks like. Wouldn't that be something? Of course, it is the United States that is bankrupt, not Canada. So this should be a Canadian-led merger and acquisition. In the latest sign the United States is in deep financial trouble, Trump signed an executive order Thursday establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve, forcefully endorsing a currency once shunned as a tool for money launderers. Catherine Austin Fitts says, "We are watching a campaign to persuade the federal and state governments to begin significant Bitcoin buying programs using taxpayers' money and funds borrowed with ever-expanding debt. This will solve a major problem faced by the Bitcoin billionaires. How to liquefy their holdings in a market that is not sufficiently broad and deep to allow them an exit during a major pump. Now that the debt growth model is over, and there is more paper than there are real assets, the rush for land and real assets is on. Think of this as a swap. If you are the Bitcoin billionaires and Mr. Global, you want to get retail to buy your digital creations so that you can shift to owning and controlling the real assets. Your problem, however, is that retail will not buy in sufficient quantity, so you simply mandate retail buys by using the government to do it. It is important to connect the dots with the federal government's efforts to survey all land and mineral resources and the growing discussion of how to take advantage of $500 trillion of land and minerals owned by the US government. In other words, the Trump people are trying to use crypto, backed by US physical resources, as a way to avoid bankruptcy. In another disturbing development, it turns out Wall Street billionaire Larry Fink convinced Trump to hand over the Panama Canal to BlackRock. His pitch Fink's investment company, BlackRock Inc., was interested in buying the ports on either side of the waterway, shifting them into American hands, according to people familiar with the discussion. And with that, there would be no need to have the United States take the century-old canal by force. In a filing, CK Hutchison Holdings said Tuesday that it would sell all shares in Hutchison Port Holdings and in Hutchison Port Group Holdings to the consortium in a deal valued at nearly $23 billion, including $5 billion in debt. The deal will give the BlackRock consortium control over 43 ports in 23 countries, including the ports of Balboa and Cristobal, located at either end of the Panama Canal. Other ports are in Mexico, the Netherlands, Egypt, Australia, Pakistan, and elsewhere. That's not all. The Trump administration on Tuesday identified 443 federal properties that will possibly be put up for sale, including the headquarters of the FBI and Labor and Justice Departments, as the president continues to downsize the federal government. Our U.S. Space Force sources say it would be BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street buying the assets. So it looks like BlackRock, etc., are making a move to buy up the bankrupt U.S. corporation's assets. If you ask me, it would be better to let Canada do the U.S. cleanup. No matter what, though, as Representative Thomas Massey says, Americans would be better off if the Federal Reserve did not exist. The Fed devalues our currency by monetizing the debt, causing inflation. What makes this revelation particularly damning is that the only document confirmed to have Biden's actual signature was his letter announcing his withdrawal from the 2024 presidential race. Let that sink in for a moment. In an example of how corrupt that regime was, an EPA slush fund handled by John Podesta Rockefeller gave billions to charities founded only months earlier. The Biden administration has directed at least $20 billion to new environmental groups. A significant portion went to the Climate United Fund, which received nearly $7 billion despite being incorporated only 5 months prior. While it aims to deliver benefits like cleaner air and energy security, no public accounting exists for its spending plans. This sort of thing was widespread. Senator John Kennedy went to Social Security to fix the problem of Social Security checks being sent to dead people and being cashed. He was told it was illegal to share the information with the Treasury, who could fix it.
Do you think we ought to be sending government checks to dead people?
No, Senator, I think that's poor management.
During the pandemic, we sent out $1.4 billion of checks to dead people, didn't we?
I don't have the figure, Senator, but I wouldn't be surprised by that, given everything.
And they were
that I've seen.
cashed, weren't they?
They generally get cash whether they're dead or not.
What does that tell you?
Somebody's live.
Yep. Now, Senator Carper and I passed a bill. It took us 2 years. To try to stop that. When you die, the state sends your name to the Social Security Administration. Your name goes on what's called the Death Master File.
Yes, sir.
I went to Social Security and I said, can I see the list? They said, sure. I said, who do you share this with? They said, nobody. We can't. We don't have statutory authority. So you don't share it with the do not pay folks at Treasury? They said, nope. It's against the law. Well, rather than argue with them, Senator Carper and I passed a bill. But believe it or not, to say Social Security, share the dead people list with the rest of government, for God's sakes. Put down the bong and share it with them. And believe it or not, we had opposition. So we had to agree to a 3-year trial period. That 3-year trial, we've saved a bunch of money. That 3-year trial period is up at the end of 2026. I've got another bill with Gary Peters to extend it, to make it permanent. You guys got any problem with that?
Well, Senator, I cannot speak for the president or for Director Vogt.
Oh, go ahead.
But I can't. It's hard for me to imagine who would be opposed.
Well, you'd be surprised.
In another example of hopeless corruption, the TSA has more people doing full-time union work versus performing actual screening functions at 86% of U.S. airports. Put another way, 374 out of 432 federalized airports have fewer than 200 TSA officers to perform screening functions, while the rest are paid by the government but work full-time on union matters and do not retain certification to perform screening. What's more, DHS cited a recent TSA employee survey, which found that over 60% of poor performers are allowed to stay employed, and not surprisingly, continue to not perform. In yet another sign of how degenerate the US government has become, it turns out USAID and other deep state agents like the Rockefeller Foundation were funding the LGBTQ arm of India's Congress Party. Missed LGBTQ is among the 3 LGBTQ organizations in India funded by USAID. The other 2 groups are the Queer Muslim Project and the, notably, India's first transgender clinic, Mater Clinic in Hyderabad, shut down last week due to the freeze in funding from USAID on March 7th. This video from Paris Fashion Week illustrates the degenerate state of the current Western regimes. Would you call this fashion? It is also clear the current Western regimes are hopelessly linked to Zionism, which is basically the KM plan to enslave humanity. Have you noticed we still haven't seen the Epstein files or the JFK assassination files released? Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi says Israeli national security information will be redacted from Epstein's files. Why do the Epstein files need to be redacted for Israeli national security? Oops, I forgot the Zionists controlled Epstein. Wouldn't want any embarrassing names released, comments a Mossad source. Here's the actual record of Kash Patel and Pam Bondi since taking office: arrests 0, investigations 0, strongly worded letters to each other 2, Fox News appearances 8. Now guess what happened? Massive brush fires broke out in Long Island, New York, near where the U.S. Attorney General said the FBI was withholding documents on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Elon Musk confirms Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and Reid Hoffman as Epstein clients, who are obviously extremely powerful politically and very wealthy. Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and Reid Hoffman, and some others too.
Convicted felon. They kept saying convicted felon, convicted felon. And everybody knows what it is.
Yes.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying they could do it so brazenly to a guy who was the president for 4 years.
Right. That lawsuit was funded by Reid Hoffman, who is a major Dem donor. And also an Epstein client. The plot thickens.
The plot thickens. Jesus Christ.
Yes.
It's just, it's so blatant. It's like so obvious. The SpaceX lawsuit, the Trump stuff, it's so obvious.
Yes. Like known Epstein clients who are obviously extremely powerful, powerful politically and very wealthy, are Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and Reid Hoffman, and some others too, but those three. So, why was Reid Hoffman so intent on destroying Trump?
Do you think it's because they're worried about the list coming out?
Yeah, one of the reasons. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm like, this is, so.
It's so frustrating to be sitting in a situation where the list isn't coming out.
Well, it better come out, hopefully tomorrow.
Why'd they release bullshit today?
I don't know.
What's the point in giving these people like a happy folder to wave around in front of the camera with nothing in it that's new? It doesn't make any sense. It's not encouraging.
Like I said, it's the tough thing that they've got is, they've been made captain of a ship with a hostile crew.
Right.
So they don't have it's not like you have like magical powers. You get made captain of a ship with a hostile crew. You still have a hostile crew.
Right.
You've got to bring in people who are going to, be helpful as opposed to obstructionist.
Right. Elon Musk says what must be considered is that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel have been made captains of ships with a hostile crew. Very understandable, and we must exercise patience. Look carefully at the video. This is a rubber-masked Elon Musk. You can see the stretching and indentations in the cheek area.
Accept corrupt money.
Yeah, but the problem is if you paid them a lot more, they're still not going to make as much money as they would insider trading.
But it's less of a forcing function.
Yes. It's
well, let me put it this way. Like if you say like somebody's got a, let's say they got like whatever, some kids in D.C. and like it's expensive. It's like expensive place to live. The schools are terrible, so like they need to send their kids to like some kind of private schooling situation. They literally cannot afford that. They cannot afford that right now. So then you get into the situation, well, from their standpoint, well, they've got to, they'll say they're doing it for their family. They're doing it for their kids.
Well, especially if it's legal, and it currently is. You kind of be silly to not do that. If you were a part of a group of people that's passing a bill, and you know this bill's going to get passed, you know the votes are there, and you know it's going to affect this industry and this particular manufacturer, and you can buy stock.
It's more than just insider trading. Like the insider trading stuff, like the stock portfolio stuff is quite trackable, but there's, it's a lot more than insider trading.
The way they're acquiring wealth.
Correct.
And what other methods?
I mean, this is really going to get me assassinated. It's like I'm not lengthening my lifespan by explaining this stuff, to say the least. I mean, I was supposed to go back to D.C. How am I going to survive? This fucker's going to kill me for sure. In fact, I do think like it's like I actually have to be careful that I don't push too hard on the corruption stuff because it's going to get me killed.
So it looks like all we are going to get is satire, but true videos like the ones below.
Are you acting like a bloody fool? If you get hot, then you must get cool. Bad boys, what you gonna do? Or what you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? Or what you gonna do when they come for you? You chuck it on that one, you chuck it on this one, you chuck it on your mother and you chuck it on your father. You chuck it on your brother and you chuck it on your sister. You chuck it on that one and you chuck it on me. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do?
Maybe we will have better luck with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in his battle against Big Pharma and Big Food. U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will meet with senior leaders of the processed foods industrial complex to discuss potential topics ranging from banning seed oils and certain food additives to nutrition labels as the revolution begins. March 7th, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is planning a large study into potential connections between vaccines and autism. He says, when my uncle was president, only 3% of America was obese. Today it's over 70%. Epidemics are not caused by genes. Genes may provide the vulnerability, but you need an environmental toxin. Something is poisoning the American people. RFK Jr. also brushed off an attempt by vaccine promoters to use old photographs to pretend there was a measles outbreak in Texas. In another indication, Big Pharma is in trouble. The Public Health Agency of Canada, or PHAC, admits COVID mRNA booster shots triggered a major surge in deaths among people who received the vaccines. The fact the government admits to mass murder by vaccine means war crimes tribunals are now certain to follow. The military will need to back this up to the hilt. If you were curious why Russian General Igor Kirillov was just assassinated, watch this video. In August 2023, Kirillov outlined how the US and Big Pharma rule the world by manufacturing biological crises. He also discussed how all of this evidence has been submitted to the UN many times and gets vetoed every time by the US, because the US cannot refute the documentation. This is the reason they killed him. He was trying to expose the biggest crime in human history.
Рост заболеваемости нехарактерными инфекциями отмечен в данный момент в ряде стран. И то есть тоже мы можем говорить о том, что это не без помощи американских биологов.
Я думаю, что вот так огульно заявлять, мы же все-таки должностные лица. Ведь биологическое оружие, если посчитать, какой ущерб нанес ковид, то, наверное, будем говорить, за 2 года, да?
Ну, основная такая пандемия 2 года шла.
То даже ее нельзя сравнить с ущербом, который был во Вторую мировую войну. Это в десятки раз больше. Зато выгодоприобретатели той же Big Pharma.
Вы имеете в виду фармацевтические все компании?
Компании, которые в основном находятся у нас там в Соединенных Штатах, это там колоссальные. Как-то вот так.
То есть вопрос?
Вопрос стоит.
Да.
Вопросы мы задаем, мы же передаем документы. Вот характерна реакция Соединенных Штатов Америки, про которую мы говорим. Ни одного опровержения тем документам, которые мы предъявили, не было. Мы передали документы, это более, наверное, 2000 листов в Организацию Объединенных Наций.
Какой ответ пришел?
У нас, как правило, 2 ответа. Один ответ происходит в Соединенных Штатах Америки. У них же он стандартный. Все, что не делается, все делается в интересах национальной безопасности Соединенных Штатов, и нам надо доверять.
Слепо доверять?
Да, слепо доверять. Там политика глобального биологического контроля. Они поняли, что это работает, что посредством искусственно создаваемых таких кризисных ситуаций биологического характера можно управлять миром. Ведь ничего бесплатно они не делают. И даже поставляя каким-то государствам на безвозмездной основе, она не такая безвозмездная, как они об этом говорят.
In conclusion, we all need to fight now to make sure humanity is finally freed from the rule of satanic gangsters. Everyone must do their part. That wraps up this Benjamin Fulford Geopolitical update for March 15, 2025. If you found this content insightful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Qualified Observers. Your support helps us continue bringing you critical intelligence briefings. Stay informed, stay prepared, and we'll see you in the next